welcome in our dear, close, longtime personal friend and the man who's going to save this show, our 1320 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham. Hammer.
I'm gonna save you.
Yeah, this has been an interesting last
He's,
10 minutes or so.
You're gonna save this show like Shaedon Sharpe is gonna save the Kings franchise.
Well, I guess that's how we get into this right here. What do you reported today that the Sacramento Kings interviewed Shaedon Sharpe, which, by the way, Shaedon Sharpe was one of several prospects that they interviewed while in Chicago, but Shaedon was the one who caught a lot of people's attention. What do you think about that young man, and what do you think about the prospects of him being a Sacramento King?
Yeah, I like that they're kicking the tires on everybody. They had prospect interviews with 26 different players at the Chicago Combine, and that is good. One of those players, of course, was Shaedon Sharpe. The Kings, from what I've heard, have also they were at his 1v0 workout, which are always stellar. I've yet to hear a single player that looked bad in a 1 versus no one scenario.
I'd make the league if somebody had me in a 1-on-0.
Kenny, I might make the league. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I wouldn't make the league unless I just got to botch layups. Like, certainly can't hit a 3-ball unless Buddy Hield is in my face. I think that it's interesting. I think it's some gamesmanship. I think it's very clear that the Sacramento Kings want everyone in the world to know that they have kicked the tires on Shaedon Sharpe, and that's kind of the way this thing goes. This is a really heavy top end of the draft. The top 3 are really good big men, and I think everybody would like to see one of those guys drop to the Sacramento Kings, but there's a good chance they won't. We talked about this on Wednesday, Kenny, when we were on, all day. The number 4 spot is becoming like a very, very big power position because it's the first spot that is obtainable in the draft. And if you look at the top 3 teams, I don't see Orlando, OKC, or Houston trading that pick at all. Those guys were all tanking so they could be in the position to draft one of these players. And this, where the Kings are at, that's the first spot. And then you have a couple of teams behind them, like Detroit Pistons, who are also in the same type of position that Orlando is in and that Houston's in and, OKC is in. They want to be as high as possible. They want to build through the draft. And so there's going to be teams that want to move up to number 4 to either jump over Detroit or to, get a guy that they think can change their franchise. And Sharpe is probably the name that's going to get the most buzz here. Jaden Ivey will also get a bunch of buzz, but Shaedon Sharpe will get a bunch of buzz here.
So I'm going to ask the question. I kind of joked with it throughout the day, but I don't think anything happened. I'm pretty sure anything happened, but I got to ask the question anyway, James. Shaedon has his interviews, and then abruptly leaves. Too early for any type of promise from anybody, correct?
No, that's not too early for a promise. But at the same time,
Kenny's going to analyze the tone in which you used when you said that to determine if that promise was made by Sacramento.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that promise wasn't made by Sacramento, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't have been. I think what I read is that he left early, but it was actually planned for him to leave early, that he had something else going on. I don't know what for an 18-year-old kid is more important than doing interviews at the NBA draft combine. But, the one good thing I will tell you is that he did his measurements. He went and did his height and his weight and his wingspan. He came in a little shorter than I thought he would at 6'4.25" without shoes, 6'5.5" with shoes. That's fine for a shooting guard, but if he was going to transition and play some small forward, probably not a good size. 198 pounds, and then he threw up a 6'11.5" wingspan, which has everybody in the world going, "Oh my goodness!" He didn't, show off the alleged 49-inch vertical leap that he has, and he didn't do a bunch of shooting drills. He did that at his pro days. So I definitely think that, you know, he put in the work to at least show people how big he is and all that stuff. And he did interviews with a handful of teams and then got out of there.
Highest. This we're gonna tie the whole show together here in this final hour with James Ham. Does he have the highest ceiling?
He might. I mean, it's hard because any footage that we're watching of him is against high school kids. So, like I would like to tell you that, he's got unlimited potential and all that stuff, but, he hasn't played in a year, really. And he was the number one prospect for the 2023 draft, although, I mean, in all honesty, he wouldn't be the number one prospect going into the 2023 draft. There's two prospects that I think have moved ahead of him and would be ahead of him in 2023. What is it? Scoot Henderson, and then I can't remember Wanayabi.
Australia. He's from Australia or something like that, or
no, I can't remember where he's from, but I'll look him up during the break. Those guys are both like franchise changers. I don't know if he's a franchise changer or not. He's a 3-level scorer with huge hops and a gigantic wingspan. He definitely has a little bit of like Bradley Beal type game in him, and I think that's good. Yeah, there we go. Wimbayama. There we go. Yes. Yep. Victor Wimbayana. That's who will be most likely the number one pick. And I mean, he's like tremendous, has like
for 2023.
Yeah, for 2023. But Sharpe, like, you got to remember that this is a young kid. I mean, he's going to be 19 soon, but he's a kid that bumped up his draft year. So he should be a senior in high school right now. And that's why, he reclassified. So, yeah, it's all interesting. He's, to me, he's probably got the most intrigue. And this is what the Kings needed. The Kings needed someone of high intrigue to sneak into the top 5 and possibly the top 3, because then you start having a whole lot of other potential, things that could happen. One of the big 3 big men could fall to you. A team could jump up, could offer you the moon to slide into the 4 spot. Even a team like Detroit, if they thought somebody was going to move up to get the guy they wanted and jump ahead of them, they could give up something substantial. And so I think it's a good place to be in if you're the Sacramento Kings.
Hey, James, the Kings meeting up with about 26 prospects. Is that par for the course? Is that more than usual, or is that less than other teams? Like, where does that rank with how things typically go?
Yeah, that was it was 26 with 1 day to go. So their total will probably be in the mid to high 30s when it's all said and done. No, this is typical. This is what you want from your team, because it's not just about today's draft, this season's draft. There are other things at play here. You need to get a sit down with each of these players, because almost all of them are going to be in the league. And so you want to know who they are. If you have the opportunity to go and really kick the tires on somebody, throw a bunch of weird questions at them, and really get a good feel for somebody, because, I mean, it's a small league. These guys come back around. You never know when one of these players might be something that you go trade for. And if you had a little bit more knowledge of them, then that's good. And I think that's why you get so many, even the draft prospect workouts. I mean, we talked about this when we talked about Anjali Ranadive and the assistant GM job with the Stockton Kings. Like, every single one of these guys, if they're not in the first round and they're not in the second round, they're all going to be guys that are considered for like G League positions at some point. So it's good to know who they are. It's good to sit there and watch them play and see how they react to things, and just so you have a bigger knowledge base for the future. Because again, like that G League position, the G League is one of the hardest things ever to fill up, because I think you only have 10 roster spots, but you could lose 5 guys in a day, and then you got to go find 5 new dudes. It's not like you just drop down to the YMCA and like, hey, who wants to go play for the Stockton Kings tonight? Because Kenny would have already played if that would happen,
They
But
really tracking on that.
yeah, I think it's something that you need
them.
to it's good that they're taking in all this information.
Do you think, as it pertains to that 4 spot, um, right now, it's really those 3 guys that we've been talking about: Sharp and Ivy and Keegan Murray?
Yeah,
James
it looked like
really
he was
thinking about this one. Yeah, he's thinking hard about this question. Like he is that's probably the greatest question I've ever asked right there. It has gotten Ham deep in thought. And now Ham, I believe, is done thinking. James, you want to?
I
I
don't
don't
even
know
know
if you
where
were
we
answering,
ended.
and I don't even know if you were answering. You froze like you were just asking the question. You were just giving this question great thought. Do you think right now, early in this process, the Kings are zeroed in on Ivy, Sharp, and Keegan Murray?
I think that they're in collection mode. I mean, in all honesty, I don't think they're making this pick. I think that someone else will draft
Really?
number 4. Yeah, I have, if someone slides to them from the top 3, then there's a possibility. But again, if it's Jabari Smith or if it's Chet Holmgren, that's one thing. But even Paolo Banchero, I'm not sure that Paolo Banchero really fits with Domantas Sabonis long term, and that's a problem. So I mean,
Mm.
that's going to be the guy. But I know that if Banchero falls to number 4, all of a sudden you're sitting on a pot of gold. And the same thing, Sharp is the guy I think more than Ivy that can jump into the top 3 and push somebody back, and that's tremendous. So I think you want that to happen, and because it opens up even more options for you as a franchise. Like who's going to be the team that wants so badly to get into the top 4 that they'll give up something. And again, I think the Kings are in a position of power.
It could also be dangerous if you ask me, because I feel like, for me personally, you can get into a position where you just start outsmarting yourself and you start doing things just to do them, just to say like we're making moves. Like I don't. I'm looking at this whole situation in at 4 with guys like Ivy, Sharp, maybe you throw Keegan Murray in there if there is one of those guys that fall down. Like I need an all-star in the trade. Like a good role player, that's not going to get it done. You know what I mean? Just moving back for the sake of moving back, and and adding just what we consider a starter, that don't do it for me. Strauss is starting for the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't. I can get a starter anywhere. Like I need an all-star, and I'm the only thing I'm worried about with this is they start making moves just to make moves.
I think it wouldn't be make moves to make moves. It's make moves to get better faster. I think that's what it would be, and that's the problem with Ivy and with Sharp. I mean, you could say that about Matherin. You could say it about AJ Griffin. It's the problem with that grouping of players. It's that you just really have no idea. It's a total crapshoot. You hope that one of them will turn out to be an all-star level player, but I think if you can get a plus starter, like a guy who may not be an all-star but's really close to being an all-star, then that's a more sure thing than any one of these young prospects. And I know some of these young prospects could be really good. I don't think anyone is expecting this group to become superstars. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that doesn't seem like that's the potential of these players. They can be really good. They can be all-star level players, but there's a big difference between that and superstar. And you're going to have to wait 2 to 3 years for them to get there, because that's typical. I mean, we're talking about an 18-year-old Shaedon Sharpe. Like that's really, really young to think that you're just going to heap a bunch of pressure on him to save the franchise. So, I
I
think
mean, Anthony
that's
Davis is 19, isn't he? I mean, Anthony Edwards is
Yeah,
19, isn't
he
he?
might have just turned 20.
yeah. I mean, but again, that's a personality and he did play in college,
Okay.
so yeah, it's a little different. I mean, he hasn't played. He should be a high school senior. So just think where he should be and where he is. I mean, he should be a kid going to prom. He shouldn't be a kid who's, you know, ducking out of the NBA draft combine and risking, you know, tens of millions of dollars by sliding down 2 to 3 spots if bad things happen. So yeah, it's an interesting, these guys really, there's so much pressure on them to be good from a young age, and it's just how they deal with it. And you hope that he can deal with it well, but the fact that he didn't get the opportunity to understand that at the college level, you know, you go from high school where, you know, it's like a bunch of parents in the gym. Maybe you got some people in the gym, but maybe it gets up to, you know, 500 people or something. But if he would have got a season at Kentucky where all of a sudden you're playing for 30,000 fans or, you know, something crazy, you know, or you somehow make it to the tournament and you're at, you know, the Final Four where 70,000 people are in the building. Well, that's a different kind of pressure than playing in high school. And so we would have got to see a little bit more of like the response and how he fits into like a different style, like an actual pro style offense and all that stuff.
Yeah. I like, sorry, Dave. I like what you're saying for all this. I do. I understand it. Yeah.
If I gave you the 4th pick, or, and you know, you throw in Rashawn or whatever else comes in this, but you get the 4th pick, or you get Collins or Randall or Siakam or Tobias Harris. Do any of those 4 names intrigue you to move the 4th pick?
Yeah, 2 of them do.
Siakam, I know, is one of them.
Yeah, Siakam and Collins. Now, see, Collins is a little different. Like there's a lot of murmurs that Atlanta. Sorry, I have allergies like horrible today.
Today, bad day for allergies.
It's a bad day. Plus, we had the whole house fan on until really late last night, just sucking all this pollen into my house. That probably was a poor decision. So to get back to it, yeah, I think it's a really good question.
Some people regret drinking too much. James Ham regrets leaving the house fan on too late.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so I think Siakam for sure. And then when you get to Collins, there's a lot of rumors right now that Atlanta is ready to get out from underneath John Collins' contract. And that's a big deal. And they also might look to get out from underneath Kevin Huerter's contract. And so all of a sudden I'm like, all right, game on. Yeah, let me see what kind of package that I can put together for something like that. I mean, like just spitballing, just this isn't a rumor. This is just one of those, like if I were sitting at number 4 type scenarios, like would I consider, you know, Harrison Barnes, who's got 1 year left on his deal, so you're going to save a whole bunch of money for the Atlanta Hawks. Rashawn Holmes, who they can go and deal to someone else if that's, or you can change it out, switch it out for Justin Holiday and Alex Len. You know, would I feel comfortable trading those 2 for the 16th pick along with Collins and Huerter? Yeah. Now I got a shooter. Now I got a second shooter. I'm still in the draft. I still have all of my my rights as far as the Stepien rule. Like I can trade next year's pick. I can do all kinds of things. So, you know, there are a lot of things that I think could happen between now and what is it, June 23rd. Siakam is going to be the guy that's kind of hard to get because he's a proven all-star, and you know, so that's one thing that I would think would be really hard to like get Toronto to buy in. I think Siakam's under contract for 2 years, and but I still think he's a really good player. He's 28. He's a young 28. He's not an old 28. So it's not like he's almost 29. Again, he's under contract for 2 years. I don't know if I'd do it straight up. I'd want something else from Toronto for sure. But that still, you know, the number 4 pick I think has that kind of value. That's if someone decides that they're going to trade that pick. And if I'm Toronto, I'm thinking about it because you hit on Scotty Barnes big time, and you need to clear a spot for Scotty Barnes, but you also could drop back to Scotty Barnes like age level and start building up from there. And I think that would be an interesting move.
They hit on Precious too. With that pick, it's for Precious Okoro. They hit on that. See, I hear that John Collins thing, and especially when you start talking about taking in a lot of a lot of contract and a lot of money, and I'm just like, well, now I'm helping you out. Like, what do I need to give you for? I'm taking stuff off your books so you can progress as a franchise. What do you need my number 4 pick for? I'm giving you Harrison Barnes. I'll give you Rashawn Holmes. I'm giving you NBA players that you can do something with. You don't need 4, James. What I say on Wednesday, yesterday's price is not today's price. You have to come with a little something better than John Collins. So I out of that group, I think Siakam is the one for me where I probably wouldn't think twice. Collins, we'd have to negotiate a little bit. Maybe ultimately I would give up the 4 for Collins and Herter and all this other stuff. I'm not saying it's a no-go, but we'd have to talk about it a little bit more. The other 2, that's not enough for me at 4.
Yeah, you're taking on a lot, but like you're the guy who pitched Duncan Robinson to us, and Herter is a similar player, maybe a better player, and his contract is like $5 or $6 million cheaper every year. Like his contract is much more reasonable, and he's under contract for like 4 years. So again, you're locking up, and the Kings need shooters. So like if you're gonna, you need to come out of this draft / free agency with probably 2 or 3 starters. Like you've got to have, and at least like 3 or 4 rotational players. I mean, that's where you're at if you're the Sacramento Kings. Like this team isn't good enough. So, if you're going to expect them to improve and get better and start to grow into something, then, fill up the roster with NBA starters. I remember one year Dave Yeager looked at me and he goes, "Do I have one NBA starter on my roster?" And I'm like, "Well, you got like a 35-year-old, 36-year-old Zebo." He's like, "Yeah, I mean a legit at this point, not to
I believe he was your leading scorer, Dave.
Yeah,
if I
but
remember
no,
correctly.
but his point is like Zebo, he loved
No.
Zebo. He was with Zebo forever, but his point was like Zebo.
He's not starting elsewhere.
No, he's not starting elsewhere. The only one that possibly could have been a starter elsewhere at that point in that season was George Hill. And George Hill played so poorly that the Kings dealt him for nothing. But at the same time, I understood what he was saying. Like right now, you look at this team and you honestly say, how many NBA starters do you have? And you got to be honest because, again, Sabonis is your center, so Rashawn Holmes isn't going to be your starter. He's not an NBA starter for you at this point. He could be for someone else, but realistically, you can only guarantee that Fox, Harrison Barnes, and Domantas Sabonis would start on other NBA teams. And then you start to wonder, who are these other guys? Is DiVincenzo a starter? Is he a 6-man? Is Davion Mitchell a starter or a 6-man? You don't have any what you would call guaranteed starters. And this team needs to walk into next season deep enough where they have 5 starters, but really deep enough where they have 8 starters, 9 starters. And, only 5 of them get to start, but you still got, a bunch of players.
Real quick, Damien, I just want to ask both of you guys this. And this is this argument that I made months ago, and it's coming back once again. I just watched the Eastern Conference Finals, and Gabe Vincent and Strauss were starting in the Eastern Conference Finals and getting tick and getting shots up and playing well. They just won game 1, got beat up in game 2, but they've been starting all playoffs. Saying that they need so much more, and what it sounds like to me indirectly is that's an indictment on Fox, Sabonis, and Harrison Barnes. Because you got 3 guys that are starters in this league, that are bona fide guys. And if we need so much more than DiVincenzo or Rashawn or something like that, now, let's reevaluate the whole thing then. Because if those 3 guys, one that's an all-star, one that people think has an all-star talent, another one that is like a 10-year veteran that's put up 17 a game all the time, if that isn't enough to get you to the postseason or anything like that, we got way more concerns than we just need 1 or 2 more starters. We need to clean house.
Well, no, I mean, you need an identity. You need a coach that's going to be here long-term. You need a system in place. The Miami Heat can start whoever they want because they have a system and they have a time-tested system that works. We can go back to Rick Adelman, when he was with the Kings. Like, he just had a system in place that Peja Stojakovic goes down, Hedo Turkoglu steps in. The Chris Webber goes down, they go get Brad Miller, but, again, Scott Pollard steps in, Lawrence Funderburg steps in. You have to have a system in place that can support that. And a lot of, again, what the Heat system is to develop talent and to get them to do things that make sense. So again, like we could go on forever. I had this conversation years ago with one of the Kings front office people that's no longer there. But like, if you're looking at the G League the right way, in my opinion, the G League shouldn't be a place where you go try to find the next Pascal Siakam, because that's so rare. Like, maybe you get lucky and you come across a Pascal Siakam, but more likely you need to find like 6 Daniel Houses. Can I create a rim running shot blocker? Can I create a 3-and-D wing at the G League level? Can you create those pieces?
Oh,
James wants us to think about that. Can you create those pieces? He wants everybody listening right now to think about that. Can you create those pieces? That's everyone's homework, is to decide whether they can create those pieces or not. It's James Ham, frozen in time, with this sentiment right there on the Sacramento Kings. I think the wind, not only wreaking havoc on James's allergies, I think yeah, I ain't taking James off the screen. We're just leaving frozen James Ham on the screen right now until further notice. One other thing. This is really funny for those that are watching, because James is just frozen. For those that are on Odyssey and 1320 AM, just trust this is funny, because James is in midpoint, and he's got something to say about this Kings organization and establishing an identity, and he's frozen in thought. One concern I do have when we talk about trading, we were talking about how trading the number 4 pick versus trading the number 7 pick or 8 pick. Like, yeah, it's more valuable, but it's less romantic to me, because I feel like there's something intriguing about drafting a young player. As we bring in the unfrozen, this is the thawed version of James Ham here on the show. James, I'm not even going to ask you to try to get back into the point that you were making. I think your kind of point was made about the Kings establishing an identity in this organization, and really you're talking about plug and play, and that's why it works in Miami. And I was telling Kenny, I don't find trading the number 4 pick as attractive as I trading the number 7 and 8 pick. While I understand it's more valuable, I also think this team just went and acquired Domantas Sabonis, right? And I think we all believe, and history could prove us wrong, but in the moment, that feels like a home run play. And you traded a young Tyrese Halliburton for that. De'Aaron isn't young anymore. Like, De'Aaron, like he's young in terms of his age, but he's a veteran in the league at this point. Like, he's going 2 years into his max deal. I don't know that I want to trade it. Like, if it's an 18 or a 19-year-old coming in, I think I'm okay with that. If it's a skilled 18 or 19-year-old coming in, I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but the potential is that you waste a year of their career. I mean, or 2 years waiting for this other piece to become who they're going to become. And I get it.
You could still be good. Like, Scotty Barnes was good. Like, you could be good. You can contribute.
Yeah. I think Scotty Barnes, like certain players, they fit that mold. They come in and they have a specific skill set that works. But other players, it's kind of like if we look at, let's just compare loosely. This isn't probably a totally fair comparison, but let's compare Shaedon Sharpe to like Tracy McGrady. How many years did it take Tracy McGrady to become Tracy McGrady? Like 3? Like, it takes a while, even for like top tier guys that are really almost can't miss guys. It still takes that much time. You're just waiting for this cycle. Kobe Bryant didn't average a bunch of points in his rookie season. It's so rare that a player walks in and just starts performing. And like you guys brought up Keegan Murray, like if you want to be safe and like get a rotational starter, then Keegan Murray is like your guy. But the fact is, I don't think he has a ceiling. And you when you're drafting at number 4, you have to draft for ceiling. You can't draft for floor. And at 7, you can draft for floor. You can look at a guy and say, okay, I think he can do this, and I pray that he can do this, but he won't be any lower than this, right? Well, when you're drafting number 4, you got to say he could be this, and if he's this, it's okay because I took the swing.
We'll talk more about this. I also want to ask you about Jordi Fernandez and Jay Triano. We haven't talked about Jay Triano yet here today, so we want to dive into some of the latest members of Mike Brown's coaching staff as well, and we'll do that when James Ham returns with Dealer 1KC here on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. Clear.
Sorry, I don't know what's with the internet today.
Dude, I'm sure it's the wind, man. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's windy here. I just know.
Oh, it's not. Oh, it sucks here.
But that could be it though. Like it could be windy over where my internet place is. So, yeah, it's not great. That's for sure. I was gonna look up something.
Oh.
Yeah, I think like to finish my point with the Miami situation, it's not just that Miami can like get a player, fit them into their system. They have defined roles when they get there. So again, Max Strauss is like very specifically, you're a 3-and-D dude. You better be able to shoot the 3, and you better be able to stay in front of your guy, right? So that's big. But they're able to create these guys because they just have a strong system. And then on top of that, they're able to continue to develop guys once they get into the league, where the Kings typically aren't. So it's not just like getting your hands on a Miami guy or getting your hands on a San Antonio guy. It's that once you get there, you have to continue their education and continue to help them develop and stay the player that you hope for them to be. The Kings don't have the same system when they get here, and all of a sudden they look very different when they're not playing alongside, a Jimmy Butler and a Bam Adebayo.
But to that point, and to your point, it wouldn't matter if they got 2 or 3 starters. Like if they got 2 or 3 guys that could start, it wouldn't matter because their system sucks.
Well, no, I agree, but what the Kings can't do is start a guy like Gabe Vincent because the system isn't strong enough to withhold it, and the players around them aren't good enough to support that system. So you have to have better players than Gabe Vincent in order for them to hold their own as much as possible.
And that makes sense. But I would say indirectly, you're saying you got to have better players than Fox, Sabonis, and Harrison Barnes. Because those are 3 guys that start anywhere on the league. You got 3 of your 5 guys. Like not even the Heat got 5 guys that would start on any NBA team in their starting lineup. Kings got 3 of their 5, and we're still asking for like, we need like 2 or 3 more starters. Like what?
Well, it can be the fact that it's this group of players and how they work together, Mm-hmm. So I mean, it can be simple as that you just have players that they have flaws to their game that don't cover for the AI,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Yeah, because I mean, you're right. It's not like Dwayne Dedmon is a starter. It's not like they have a lot of players there who just aren't starter caliber. I mean, and let's be honest, Kyle Lowry is their starting point guard. So I mean, and he would start anywhere. He's a starter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've got plenty of guys who could start other places.
They got 4 guys on the team.
Yeah, you could probably make the case that Boston probably has 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 4. I mean, an aging Horford. I don't know, like Robert Williams. I'm not sure.
But that's the thing that you see with a lot of these guys, right? A lot of these teams in the league. And that's why I say they shouldn't be that far off. Maybe a new coach and a system will do wonders. Because look at Dallas. They got Luka, and then they got who else is starting? Brunson might start. Then what he hadn't started in his career. He's a baller, like he can go, but he don't even start now. He comes off the bench for Dallas.
Yeah,
Bullock, Finney-Smith, like these aren't guys that these aren't the '96 Bulls or the 2016 Warriors. But like you say, system and the best players, they they hold the water. They do what they need to do. Utah, they had Daniel House and O'Neal starting. Those aren't world beaters.
Yeah, but the system, man, I'm telling you,
That's
and that's
what I'm
that's
saying.
again like why you're not focused on your G League and creating those players. I just don't know. Like they should have been doing it forever. You could have just kept churning out. That's what Houston kept doing. They just always had another guy who could step in and fill whatever role it was that you needed because that's what they were doing. They were doing that at the G League level, and all you have to do is take the skill set that you're doing there and drop them into the new place and then continue to help them build and to strengthen who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you got to get that system in place.
Yeah,
we're coming back, guys. Okay. Coming back ish.
Did you see?
Man,
you see your boy John Stockton?
Man, I don't know. I was busy looking at live on the Odyssey app. Only Jesse knows what a massive smartass remark I was about to make there on the live stream. I'll share it with you guys during the next commercial break, man. Stilo and KC, brought to you by McQueen and the Violet Fog, the smoothest gin in the world, handcrafted in Brazil. First pour, just 26 minutes away. James, 1320 Kings Insider, creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham, with us here. James, can you confirm, is Doug Christie officially on Mike Brown's staff?
No one within the walls will confirm.
Okay, because Mark Stein said he was. There was I don't think there was a report in The Athletic that he was, but there was a reference in The Athletic that that Mike was asked to keep Doug Christie. But I keep looking around like if James ain't said it, I don't believe it, and I don't see it. I didn't think that you had mentioned that yet.
I would say that no one within the walls will confirm, and but there is a very good chance that Doug Christie is back with the team next year.
Okay, good stuff.
So
good stuff. What can you tell us about Jordi Fernandez? Let's start there. There's a couple of official coaching hires that are public, and I want to talk about both of those and start with Jordi.
Yeah, Jordi is interesting, right? He's a guy, that came over from Spain, worked for Impact as like a player development guy. Mike Brown met him, thought he was intriguing, brought him into the fold as his son's basketball coach, and to coach an AAU team and to train his son and to be his personal assistant to drive Mike Brown around when he was a coach in Cleveland. And then they stumble upon him and the Cavs say, hey, he's pretty intriguing. Can we hire him to be part of the staff? And so he works 7 years, I think it is, with Mike Brown in player development. He's known as a major player development guy. But then, he outlasted Mike Brown in Cleveland. Mike Brown left and he stayed on and made it all the way to, I think it's 2016-17. He joined Michael Malone's staff in Denver, and he's been an assistant coach for the last few years in Denver. And by all accounts, he's a nice rising up and coming guy in the league. And I think the biggest thing with him is he's the associate head coach. So that's basically your lead assistant. He does not have head coaching experience, but he knows Mike extremely well. And on top of that, he was part of the coaching staff for the Nigerian national team with Mike Brown. And so these are the types of guys that he's going to be comfortable with, that'll be his sounding boards, that understand his terminology. He can start already, even though Mike Brown is still in the playoffs, he can start disseminating the lingo right now. He can start showing guys the playbook, sending playbooks out, having conversations with guys while Mike Brown is currently coaching. And so I think it's really good to get him in place right now. And he's a guy with potential. And I think the other thing that I like about him is that we're always looking for the coaching tree, right? And I think this is a guy who has future head coaching aspirations, But on top of that, he's Mike Brown's guy. He's the guy that Mike Brown discovered and has nurtured the relationship, and feels confident and comfortable in him coming in and helping him run the show. Yeah. So it's definitely, for me, it's a good hire. I don't know him personally, but the NBA is a small world, and he's been on a really good coaching staff who just happens to have a gigantic center and Nikola Jokic that can pass. And I'd also, I know Wes Unseld Jr. gets a lot of credit for the defensive improvements in Denver. But if you look at really that coaching staff in Denver, they've made like monstrous strides with guys like Jokic, who is an absolutely defensive gem, even though he doesn't look like it. He, like, the metrics on him defensively are spectacular. And if you can do that with him, you might be able to do it with Sabonis and some of the guys here.
I thought that was a fascinating journey and story. I was listening to the Kings Beat last night, and just how he got from where he was to now he's an assistant head coach on the NBA franchise. Just crazy, where he's like, hey, Mike, what do you say? Mike Brown said, I got $500 a month, a fully furnished apartment, and,
And you get to drive my car around.
You get to drive my Range Rover around. And it's crazy. And one of the things that you talked about, you mentioned a little bit that I want to get maybe your insight on, is when you talk about Denver, I feel like maybe the Kings and Monty and all these guys look at Denver and look at what they do with Jokic and be like, man, I'd like to get somebody from there so we can incorporate Sabonis into what we're doing. But then you're like, Mike Malone would never let anybody from Denver come to Sacramento. The fact that Mike Brown had the relationship in the foresight to say, hey, I got this guy in Denver that I know if I get the job, I could just imagine him in an interview saying, I know if I can get the job, I can bring him over, and he has some time spent with Jokic, and we can incorporate that in what we're doing. Am I making too much of it, or do you think that was part of the pitch? Having a guy like that come in and bring his expertise and some of the things he worked with Jokic into Sacramento to maybe incorporate that with Sabonis?
No, I mean, I think there's a legitimate, like, he has basketball chops. And the one thing I'll tell you too is Michael Malone is a teacher. He's the son of a coach. He's a guy that, has been around the game his whole life. His dad was Chuck Daly's defensive coordinator with the Detroit Pistons bad boys. Like, Brendan Malone is an incredible defensive coach for decades in the league. And, so I think Mike is a teacher. And if I'm not mistaken, Mike actually was going to be a teacher if it wasn't for him going into basketball. And so, like, look, that's something that I think is good. He's not a selfish guy. He's not a me guy. He's a guy kind of like Mike Brown, who is willing to impart knowledge and willing to bring up guys to be the next generation of coaches. And so I would look at it that way. And I would also, I don't know why I haven't thought of this before, but there has to be overlap between Michael Malone and Mike Brown in Cleveland. And, like, I haven't gone back and looked at it, but I almost guarantee those guys, know each other well. I can look it up here, but yeah, that's one of those things where Michael Malone was an assistant in Cleveland, and I'm pretty sure that he had to have been there at the same time.
2005 to 2010, he absolutely was there.
Yeah. So
Mike Brown, those are Mike Brown's years.
Those are Mike Brown's years. Yeah. And they're also, if you look, there's that 1 year where Jordi Fernandez is actually on the staff with Michael Malone as a player development guy. I think he started in 2009, right? Something like that with Cleveland. 2009, yeah, all the way to 2016. So yeah, like, the NBA is such a small world, and so it makes sense. This hire makes sense. It's someone he's comfortable with, someone he can rely on. We had a long discussion on the podcast. I think it's totally worth listening to, because me and Sean Cunningham went back and forth. Fox 40's Sean Cunningham, and while we were going back and forth, like, we've seen so many different, like, iterations of coaching staffs, and guys who, it works out, and guys that it doesn't. And I think a lot of these guys, if you build the staff the wrong way, there's an uncomfortableness to it, and there's not wanting to step on somebody's toes, and there's not wanting to tell your head coach that you know more about defense than they do, even if you do, even if you're a better defensive coach, and because it's their world. So like Michael Malone had his staff, which, you know, I thought was a bunch of good dudes. You know, again, going all the way back to Paul Westphal. Paul Westphal's staff had people on there that he had known for, you know, for decades. And then even guys like Brian Gates, who he plucked out and brought into the league. You know, every staff is so different, but, you know, George Karl's staff were a bunch of guys that knew how to support George very specifically. Dave Yeager's staff was a bunch of guys that had been through the minor leagues together and had this like incredible bond as like a brotherhood. And that was great. And then we get to, you know, Luke Walton's staff, and it was a bunch of guys who didn't know each other, and the whole thing fell apart because you could feel it the whole time. So I'm glad that Mike Brown is going out and hiring coaches that he's comfortable with and that he's known from the past.
And let's work Jay Triano into this. That was the hire that I don't actually know if it was officially announced today, but it was out there that Jay Triano is joining Mike Brown's staff. He's an offensive guy. Worked with Terry Stotts and Charlotte. He worked in Charlotte.
The last 4 years.
He was like the offensive coordinator, I guess, for James Borrego. That offense, that Charlotte offense that everybody seems to love. Jay Triano was a big part of that, and he I guess unofficially has joined Mike Brown's staff.
Yeah, he's a guy who does have head coaching experience. So I think that's one of the prerequisites that you always want. You want someone else who's shouldered.
Even if it's bad. He wasn't particularly good in Toronto. And I think he was
40 and 42 or something. Yeah.
He took over for, was it Earl Watson?
Sam Mitchell.
No, in Phoenix. Like, I thought he was an interim coach. I thought he took over for Earl Watson. That might not have been him. My bad. Sorry. Point being is he's spoken highly of, particularly as an assistant.
Yeah, he did take over for Earl Watson 3 games into the season.
Yeah, they had lost like those 3 games by 40 points each.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that firing very vividly.
Yeah, and then Igor Kokoskov took over the next season. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is good. You want to bring in guys who have NBA coaching experience, because people, you know, if you're working retail and you've been a floor manager and you've been a department head and all that stuff, and you think you can just run your own store, you get to the point where you're running your own store and you go, oh no, like I don't have a good enough floor manager and my department head over there is not good. And all of a sudden you're in this whole new world where you're more conducting business than you are actually getting in and coaching. And so it's definitely one of those situations where having another guy who's been through that and understands the dynamics of how to game plan and how to, you know, all of everything that goes into being a head coach, it's so incredibly complex. And to have someone else on your staff that has been through it and knows how to get you through it, knows how to support you when the season gets hard, or when, heaven forbid, someone gets COVID and coaches have to step away. It is really good to have people who have a head coaching experience. So I think that's a good thing. Jay Triano is a guy who's been well known in the league. He spent 20 seasons either as an assistant or a head coach. You name some of the places he's been. Again, like Charlotte, Phoenix. He spent a long time in Toronto, a tremendous amount of time in Toronto. And then Portland. He was in Portland for 4 seasons, 2012 through 2016. Yeah, so he's a guy with experience and a guy that you're going to hopefully feel comfortable with if you're Mike Brown. But again, there's ties everywhere with these guys. So it's definitely a good thing that he's starting to fill out a staff with good, you know, respected coaches.
Yeah. Shout out Jill Hatch, man. She go to her Twitter feed if you need to. I mean, she just gives you the Cliff Notes version of, at the very least, of just figuring out, you know, who some of these coaches is. She did the same thing with Jay. earlier today, and I just I went through that and read some things, saw some videos, saw some clips, and I fell in love with the guy. He's the type of guy I like. He seems like a basketball lifer. He seems
Ooh,
like
da-doo-doo, doo-doo.
he seems like a
Kenny
guy.
be falling in love more than a 90s R&B record,
I
boy.
mean, I'm an R&B guy at heart, man. You know what I'm saying? I love love. You know what I'm saying? That's just me. I love love. But man, he's he has a passion for the game. It seems like he has a passion for teaching, and I think that's not no shot on anybody that was here before, but I think that's what's needed here. That's need a passion for trying to get out of this rut, and everybody pulling on one string and one chord. And just from what I saw, he seems like a guy that buys into that. And then, Damien's right. You talk about his time with Charlotte, and I mean, I love what they do offensively. And if you compare that with some of the things that Mike Brown just instinctively does on the defensive end, it's a good start. It's absolutely a good start.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna see more. We don't know the fate of all of the assistants and all of the development coaches and stuff. We don't know the fate of them yet. But I would say that there's a good chance that most of them won't be back. I mean, it's just kind of the way it goes. You switch out a whole bunch of things when you bring in a new head coach. Maybe there's someone else that they really like. Maybe Rico Hines stays. Maybe, again, I'm pretty confident Doug will be there. Um, but outside of that, like I'm not sure, and it's gonna get a little bumpy here, and some guys are gonna get left out, and so
Bumpier than your internet connection today.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, like at some point, you got to hope that Mike Brown gets to bring in as many people as he wants and as many people that can support him, and then a guy like Jody Fernandez, right?
Fernandez, yeah.
That Jordi, there we go. That a guy like him, if he's worked with somebody that he loves as a player development guy, and he's the player development guy, and he thinks that there's someone that can implement their plan as player development people, bring him in. Like start building this thing out where we have, the coaching trees are stable, and that you're letting Mike Brown kind of get his roots in strong and build something.
I know this is played. I feel like they're on to something. Like I feel like they got a little lottery luck. I personally, I know not a lot of people are in this camp with me. I like the Mike Brown hire. It seems like the assistants are going well. There's still a lot of work that Monty McNair has to do. By the way, Mitch Kupchak signed an extension today. Mitch Kupchak of the Charlotte Hornets. What does that have to do with the Sacramento Kings? Well, nothing. Just want to point out that Mitch Kupchak signed an extension. He coached his contract was up this summer. So all of the talk about Monty McNair and the extension, Mitch Kupchak GM'd, if you will, through his contract and signed an extension today and announced we'll have our head coach in the next 2 weeks or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I'm just pointing it out. Doesn't mean anything. Just pointing it out. That's all. I have nothing else. I'm done.
I would still like to see him get his extension this summer. I just think if you're gonna go down this path.
And the one thing I'll say with this particular thing is and I agree with Damien here. Like, look, man, he was a lame duck GM and he orchestrated a good season, but in this particular case, Kupchak is getting to mirror his new contract with his new coach. Mm-hmm. So that's where, it's a little bit of a difference, but I don't know. I don't like.
Chris brings up a good point. If you're a GM, you don't want to have things in common with Mitch Kupchak. That's a solid point.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not a big fan of Mitch Kupchak either. Like I don't know how that dude keeps stumbling into jobs, but it's fine. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you there. Just thought Chris made a good point.
I was just gonna say, in this particular case, I agree kind of what Sean was talking about. I mean, whether he's a lame duck GM or not, he's still gonna do a good job or do the best job that he thinks he can. Because number one, I think that's the kind of guy Monty is, but also you don't want to do a bad job. You know what I'm saying?
No, but I would bring you the Brendan Nunez response, which I thought was pretty solid. I would rather have him choosing decisions that are right for the franchise long term and not decisions that are just about getting you into the playoffs. So if Shaedon Sharpe is the right guy, but you trade him for John Collins because you think John Collins will get you there faster, but you think that Shaedon Sharpe is going to be a superstar in the future, but you can't wait that long because you're not going to be here. Those are the types of that, that's a valid point too. Like you're putting someone in a position to make knee-jerk reactions and reactions that are short-term that instant gratification that versus long-term success.
See, when you look at, as we wrap up here, when you look at the growth of the Kings beat, like that should be, like Brandon is your Shaedon Sharpe. Like he's the kid who's coming up who you've got time to develop as the Fox and Sabonis, the Ham and the Cunningham. They build out the Kings beat, and you got the kid, you got the rookie here getting his feet wet in the game, and you see you guys have built a monster over there. You've built a winning team. I think that's you don't want to trade Brendan for another veteran. Like you need the rookie there.
I agreed. The only thing is
GM of the Kings beat.
it's really difficult. Okay, so we have high level basketball conversations, but those high level basketball conversations usually hinge around obscure movie references. And
yes.
It's really hard to have that kind of discussion when someone hasn't watched There's Something About Mary.
Well, yeah. You got to do. What is Brent? We've got to go. What's Brendan's age? Do we know? Who's younger, Brendan or Jesse?
I think 23,